Everyone, and welcome to the very late December Audit Committee meeting. Sorry to drag you away from your pre-Christmas routines. I've got a couple of announcements first of all. So the more observant of you in the room will realise that we've got these little handheld mics today. So Audit Committee karaoke starts at 12 o'clock. So you've got some time to plan your routines. I know Councillor Baker's already advanced in his planning. Thank you to Councillor Curley for wearing a Christmas jumper today. You've let the whole side down. Right, so I'll start by welcoming our new Audit Committee independent member, Fiona. Welcome, Fiona. I'd just like you to introduce yourself to the committee just for a moment and welcome aboard. Thanks. Oh, yeah, I should say with the microphones, if you can leave them flat on the desk, there will be a red ring on them to say that they're not live. The minute you pick them up, it'll take a second. Sorry, they should start to be live straight away. When you put them down, it will take a second or two for them to switch off again. So when you're ready to speak, all you need to do is pick them up. Okay.
Thanks very much. Okay, so Mike asked me just to introduce myself, to just talk a little bit about who I am, but why I'm here and what I can bring. So I'm going back to my interview on that one, to be honest, Mike. So at the moment I live in St Aldries, which for those who don't know the area, it's on the A39 between Minehead and Bridgewater. But I'm planning to move into the mighty town of Minehead early next year. I am by trade, a management consultant. Please don't boo that, within the private sector. So I have vast experience within customer service, complaint management, but also governance, risk, and audit. So covering quite a wide breadth of activities within financial services and utilities mainly. My plan is to bring more support, eyes on and hands to this committee. I think I've got a lot of experience that I can bring, and genuinely, I think that local people or people should get involved from within the council to try to make things better, rather than, as I think I put it in my interview, stand outside the tent and shout in. I'd rather be inside and help and use my experience. And so that's why I'm here.
Thank you so much, Fiona. I'm sure you'll enjoy your time on Audit Committee. I'm sorry you have to sit next to Councillor Baker. Okay. That's what we all say. So moving on to apologies for absence. I've had late apologies this morning from Councillor Osborne, who has a family emergency, Councillor Simon Carswell, and I believe Councillor Susanna Hart is online. I can't actually see who's online, so can somebody give me a nudge if somebody has a hand up? If that's all right, Scott. Sharp elbows, please. So I've got two sets of minutes that are still outstanding. Firstly, from the 30th of October. Can I ask if anyone's got any matters of accuracy for these meeting minutes? No? Everyone happy for me to approve those and sign them as a true record? Perfect. Okay, moving on to the minutes of the extraordinary meeting of the 9th of December. So any matters of accuracy? Happy for me to take them as a true record? Yep. Fine. I will sign both of those to keep me in the good graces of Helen, our administrator. So moving on to item 3, which is our declarations of interest. Fiona, I assume that they've taken a declaration of interest from you, which is available on the council website. Everyone else has theirs published. Has anyone got any new declarations of interest they'd like to make? No. Perfect. So moving on to item 4, which is public question time. I'm not aware that we have any public questions. No. Perfect. So moving on to item 5, which is the Somerset Council Audit Findings Report for 24/5 and the letter of rep for Somerset Council and the Pension Fund. So I have a verbal update from Barry Morris, who's our external auditor. Barry will be joining us online. Morning, Barry.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Very jealous I haven't got one of those handheld mics, but probably good for the karaoke. So, Chair, I just wanted to provide a verbal update as to where we are in relation to the year-end audit. So I'm pleased to say that the audit is all but complete. We have less than half a dozen sample items which are outstanding at the moment. We've been discussing those with council officers and impressing if we could get those sample evidence through, that would be great. Otherwise, we will have to consider what the impact of that will be. There are a couple of areas where we know that evidence isn't going to be made available to us, either due to staff people leaving the council or due to other issues. But all those will be reported through in the audit findings report. So really, this is a very positive position that we find ourselves in. I think completing an audit, the magnitude of Somerset Council within the period that we've actually had as we go into December and the end of and January. I just really want to put on record, I know as auditors we're very quick to raise areas of concern with yourself, and yes, there are definitely improvement areas around some of the evidence that's been provided. But the finance team have been exceptional, and I use that word advisedly, in terms of the support that they have provided to the audit. So particular thanks go to Nicola, obviously, as leading the ship, and Clive as well, but particularly to Ben and to Paul Griffin in relation to how they've supported us throughout the audit. They've chased on our behalf, and they've done important quality checks as we've gone through. I'm confident that all that work will be completed. Management have got our draft audit findings report that they are working through. Management have also got a schedule of all our audit adjustments. That came through fairly late because we wanted to make sure that we captured everything that we did. And there is a common view of those items which are still outstanding. So from our perspective, Chair, we are in a good position to make sure that we can sign the audit opinion off on the at the end of January, so following the next audit committee. As you will be aware, the audit was disclaimed last year. That will continue to be a disclaimed audit opinion, but there are no significant issues where we've identified any management override of controls. There are some significant adjustments which are being made, but mostly those impact the disclosure notes. So again, those will be reported through to you in January. So happy to take any questions from any of the members.
Thank you. Thank you for that update, Barry. So I'll open the floor to members, and I should say happy birthday to Ben, who's in the room. Happy birthday, Ben. So members, any questions? No? Perfect. Looks like you got off lightly, Barry. Thank you for the positive update, and we look forward to seeing you in January. Happy Christmas.
Councillor Sully has a question, Chair.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Andy.
Sorry. Thank you. Morning all. Just a quick question. Barry, I thought, did we not allocate some money from the council to look at this position where the council not qualified, that we were going to put some extra resource into it to make it qualified, or have I misinterpreted that? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sully. So the position as regards the additional funding that's been received from MHCLG about building back assurance, that will take a number of years to actually come through. So we have no assurance over those opening balances. We have identified a number of areas where prior period adjustments have been made, where we've identified through our work on the current year balances some of the issues relating to the prior year. But we were never going to be in a position to fully get back to an unqualified opinion in this year. I think the focus has been on completing the in-year transactions so that we've got assurance that 24-25 accurately reflects the position. There's a much larger piece of work that's going on nationally about how we would recover the position going back, and because we're not going to redo the 23-24 audit.
No. So when will we be in a position where we're not in this situation? How many years will it take?
It will take a number of years, Councillor Sully.
Okay.
But again, what we're in the best possible position that we can be, because we've now got a set of audited financial statements where we've not identified, or where we're going to make an amendment that would not give us the sort of complete no assurance whatsoever.
Sure.
The audit opinion is worded in a way that it says we don't have assurance, but that's what we have to do for the standards. But I can talk you through that in a bit more detail next month, Councillor.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Barry. Thank you.
So my thanks on behalf of the committee to Nicola and the finance team for the exceptional work that they've put in to try and close down this audit as quickly as they have done. So thank you. So I'm going to move on to item 6, it's just the Treasury Management Report. So I will hand over to Alan. Is Alan in the room? Morning, Alan.
Good morning. This is the mid-year review as required by the Local Government Act 2003. Reports on Treasury activity for the first 6 months of 25-26 and the debt and investment positions as at September the 30th. Importantly, it gives assurance that Treasury activities undertaken have been in full compliance with relevant legislation, codes, strategies, policies and practices. The strategy for 25-26 was to refinance more than 170 million of maturing debt or take any required new debt whilst balancing the needs of budgets and introducing the least possible risk into the long-term debt portfolio. Key determinants for taking debt were the timing and amounts of asset disposals of the non-treasury investment portfolio and ultimately the path of borrowing rates. Investment and borrowing decisions are taken in a dynamic external environment that is affected by multiple factors. Geopolitical events, economic data and comments by members of the MPC and other central banks can move markets dramatically. So there's a summary of the main factors in the report and the resulting movements in money market funds and borrowing rates can be seen in the Appendix A. The borrowing position of Somerset Council and movements between the 31st of March and 30th of September are laid out in tables 2 and 3 and graph 1.32 of the report. A total of 82.5 million of borrowing has been repaid, 22 million pounds of short-term local loans and 60.5 million of PWLB loans. The overall rate of debt fell to 4.04% as at the 30th of September from 4.17 at the 31st of March. Up to 205 million of refinancing and further borrowing might be necessary in the second half. It is envisaged that most of this will be done on the short to medium term basis. Investment activity. Cash balances decreased during the period by approximately 13 million and 10 million was generated by sales of commercial property. 104 cash deposits totaling over 639 million pounds were made during the first half of the year. And gross investment balances stood at just under 180 million on the 30th of September, yielding an average of 4.68% as of that date. During the 6 months, gross investment balances averaged over 226 million, yielding 4.74% for the period, including our strategic pooled funds. The cash return was 4.27, which was higher than the average base rate. Investment balances and performance can be seen on tables 5 to 7 and graph 3, points 59 to 63 of the report. Income of approximately 4.84 million had been earned in the period.
Right, so open to members for questions. Thank you, Alan, for your update. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Alan, for a very comprehensive update. It's just a quick one, and I might be a bit naive here. Can I just ask on the tables, LOBO, what that stands for? And also, do we still borrow from other local authorities? I know we used to borrow from sort of other local authorities as well as the PWLB. Do we still do that? And what sort of rates? What sort of rates are they at, Alan? Thank you, Chair.
A LOBO is it's a loan made by a bank, and that stands for lender's option, borrower's option. So we take a loan at a certain rate, and every so often, periods of could be 6 months, 1 year, or 5 year, the lender will have an option to change the rate of that loan, which is obviously put it up. And when they exercise that option to do so, we have the borrower's option to repay it. Our policy is to repay at any point that anyone chooses to exercise their option. The second question was, do we borrow from local authorities? Yes, we do. We've borrowed some recently, short term, because to match when we expect commercial property sales to happen, so that we can then pay that debt down quicker. Because PWLB is a minimum of 1 year. I think when we first announced our extraordinary financial position, a lot of local authorities wouldn't lend to us, but I think now they're understanding and know that there are more local authorities in similar positions. They're more willing to lend to us, and so yeah, we've just concluded 25 million. Over the last, since this report was written, since the 30th of September.
Thanks, Alan. Can I just come back? And what sort of rates? Are we talking cheaper than the PWLB would be?
It was under the PWLB at the time, including the brokerage, which is a little bit more for commercial borrowing. 4.3 was, 4.4 was what we did at. 4.5 was how the PWLB was at the time. But it's less than the PWLB.
Any other questions? Norman?
First of all, congratulations, Alan, on the interest rate you've gained on spare cash effectively as income for the county. It's quite impressive. I've got another fund that I'm involved with, and we've not done quite as well as you. So perhaps we ought to put it over to you. Just little things. On table 14 on page 32, you've got the sale of property, the loss, and you've got revaluation gain loss in the 24-25, 17.5 million. Is that 17.5 million the revaluation of the 90.8 million pounds property sold? And therefore, the total loss is the 17.5 and the 9.2, or is it overall property?
Sorry, I have to say that I don't know about this. This is the commercial property sales, so
yes, it is.
I'll take this one.
Right. Sorry about that.
So the table demonstrates. Oh, it's really loud. The table demonstrates properties sold on the first line, so it clearly demonstrates, for transparency reasons, the value we had them in the accounts at a certain date, and then what the disposal was and the proceeds. And then we've detailed out the remaining portfolio, what the value in our accounts are, and what the revaluation gain or loss, which was a loss in this case for the properties not sold, and so that it demonstrates the revaluation value of those properties held in our accounts. So they have gone from being valued in our accounts at 128 million down to 111 million.
Yes. So does the same apply to the 93 as applies to the 111? When we come to sell the 111, we will see the profit or loss that is gained on that 111 properties, but we won't have a repeat of the notice of the revaluation.
So the revaluation is an annual exercise, isn't it? So that can go up as well as down.
Yeah.
So
what I'm trying to get at, Mr. Chairman, is the 93 is a revalued figure from the actual figure that it was bought at.
That's correct.
So We don't know the total loss, only the loss on the revaluation figure.
This table just demonstrates the value that these properties are held in our accounts at any point in time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions? Habib?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is on HRA table. I think it's table 1B.
I mean the page number, please, Habib.
I'm actually looking at the individual report. I think page 7 on the individual report. Is projected to rise from 187 million to 326 million by 2930. How is long-term affordability being assessed?
For members, page 17 of the published report, back 17.
How is long-term affordability being assessed beyond simple CFR compliance? That's one question. My second question is, what is the maximum sustainable debt level for HRA and how close are we to it, if I may? Thank you.
Officers who would like to take that one? Liz?
I can just contribute that there has to be a 30-year business case for the HRA, and that is being updated, and that these figures from this table will obviously be in that business case in far more detail. So I think that's where we need to look, is at the HRA business case, which has to be for 30 years, I understand.
Duncan, I'll bring you in then. I think Clive wants to come in online.
Yeah, just a very direct answer. The CFR is the limit effectively to what we're saying safe borrow and level is for the HRA, and that's shown in the same table, about 2 lines below, 3 lines below.
The under or over borrowing figure at the bottom of the table, I think, is the figure that you wanted to be. Clive, did you want to come in?
I was largely going to make the same point as Duncan, but to say that we will be producing the 30-year business plan and the budget in the budget process next February, March, and you'll see in that all the figures that support the overall borrowing levels, including what we call the covenants and ratios that we measure to make sure that the HRA stays in a financially healthy and sustainable manner.
So I just wanted to ask one question. So given the Leader of Council's just written out to all parishes about the change in the payout of the parish presets, does that do anything to our cash management position?
Yes, it should do. I don't know exactly how much it is for this year, but I've done some calculations before, and I think the first year we could benefit. Well, it depends how often you pay them out. At the moment, we pay them at the beginning of the year, the whole year. If you pay them half yearly or quarterly or monthly, I'm not quite sure when we're supposed to pay them.
I think the proposals were paying twice yearly.
It'd probably be in the region of a couple 100,000, I would have thought.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Habib?
Clarification, if I may, to Clive. How can members clearly see the cost of borrowing per homes delivered? Can we actually have that in future tabulated form? Thank you.
We can certainly look at the way we present the report to make sure that information is included. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, we need to formally vote on this so that it can go to executive on the 7th of January. Members happy to note the report? Yeah. So all those in favour? Yeah. Yep. Perfect. That's everyone. So thank you, everyone. So moving on to item 7, which is the strategic and high scoring tactical and operational risk register for Q2. So Alan, did you want to find out anything specific?
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't too sure whether Councillor Lation wanted to add anything as the responsible member, but in terms of the overall approach, the report outlines the risk profile of Somerset Council following review of Q2. This does embed and continues to embed our new risk management approach. So this is a continuation of the process. Clearly, as Audit Committee are well aware, slightly different role in audit rather than scrutiny looking at performance. So effectively looking at the assurance and governance associated with this. As you'll see in the executive summary, we've seen that compared to the Q1 position, the risk profile has changed. So we've seen 9 remain the same, 2 have increased in their score, 1 has decreased, and we have 1 new strategic risk. Just one particularly to highlight is regarding the risks, particularly in children's, associated with both ensuring that we've got appropriate measures in place to support transformation, but also to ensure that we have an appropriate focus on some of those outcomes that were there. So you'll see that risk increase from 16 to 25, I believe, as part of that. Some of the initial improvements that we've made to our risk management approach are as a result of engagement with Southwest Audit Partnership, and we've also tried to redesign the operational focus around our risk management, so members can now see any changes that have come through associated with our operational risks, and more of those are being reported as part of this process. The actual report itself details, and it's probably your most lengthy report in your papers today, details a huge amount of progress associated with the measurement of risk, but also there are a number of areas whereby we've tried to be really clear around the mitigating measures that have been put in place and whether they are doing anything to reduce the overall score. You'll see that some of those mitigation measures have been in place for a while. Our focus into Q3 and Q4 will be ensuring that those measures are actually taking effect and reducing the overall risk score. So making sure that we're following through on those mitigation measures, but regrettably, it's too early to be able to change those overall risk scores at this stage. I'll pause there, Chair, for questions.
I may just come in, Chair, just to draw the committee's attention to the penultimate and the last paragraphs on page 41 about the Southwest Audit Partnership, having recently undertaken an internal audit. I won't read it out for you, but I just wanted to say that I think this is a tribute to the work of officers on risk management, that we're reading words like significant steps taken to improve risk management, and again, generally sound system of governance, risk management and control that is in place. I think we're in a very different place than we were a year and 2 years ago. And I'm really pleased that Southwest Audit Partnership have been looking at our approach to risk management. It is one of the most important things we do. And although it is a huge report with many appendices, I am always aware that the risks that are the most worrying are the ones that are not recognised and not treated or dealt with in any other way. So I welcome the fact that this is a very comprehensive report. Thank you.
Members for any questions? Will?
Yes, I can talk. Good. Good morning, everybody, and thank you. There's a couple of things in this report I wanted to pick up on. The first one was on page 68, which is the risk of a successful cyber attack and the slow recovery capabilities. And I wanted to bookend that with page 117, which is, if you'll bear with me, is our business continuity plans, because the two seem to come together. Now, I think under the cyber attack, there's directors training, which is ongoing. And I counterpoint that with the comment of the updated, hang on a minute, there was something here that I can't find it now, but there was a comment made in relation to business as usual or continuity plans, whereby our engagement with staff was being a bit slow and some people hadn't turned up. There wasn't, that's it, the top one. There wasn't much engagement with the previous business continuity drop-ins or levels of support before the original July deadline, which I think is rather disappointing, bearing in mind that actually a successful cyber attack could knock us out almost immediately. I think I would like this to be taken with a little bit more seriousness than is obviously apparent. Now, I appreciate that officers are working, but if everything gets shut down, nobody's going to be working on anything. So I think this is quite important. So I would like a bit of comment back on that, please. And the other one is related to the communities, place and economy. And as you know, I chair the communities scrutiny committee for the time being, and that's the first one. It's CPEED 015 North Hill Minehead, and I note that the consequence of something going wrong here is going to be significant damage to property requiring replacement of houses and highways, fatalities if a person is present during a landslip, and the prosecution of the council. So I'm quite interested to see that the likelihood is a 5, but the impact is only a 4. When I just thought, well, you would hope that the likelihood would be less than that. But if it does happen, putting the impact down as a 4 seems to be a significant underestimation. And it's not this. The issue here is not something I know a great deal about, but we see horror stories every now and again about landslips or land failing, and they're all of a sudden. So I'd like to know a little bit more about that and why the potential impact is not as high as the likelihood. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just dealing with the first question around cyber attack, and we benefit from having Andy Kennell in the room as well, so I'm sure he can contribute if I get any of this wrong. First and foremost, it's important to say that the work that this is reporting has moved on considerably. So we are seeing more engagement. We are seeing a huge amount of training go on as a result of that. It falls into the category of those risks that I mentioned as part of my introduction about focusing on is the mitigation now reducing the score. One of the other things that we need to focus on here as well is ensuring the cause and description is updated, because it's fair to say that we must never underestimate this risk. Any steps that we take now, and I can't and will never kind of provide a kind of an opportunity for members to be clear that there isn't any risk. I'm afraid there always will be. And as much as we do, and as much as we improve the work that we do around our security, regrettably, the world of cybersecurity continues to progress. So as a result of once we work out how to manage a risk or how to address a risk, I'm afraid there are third parties out there that are a step ahead. We do our best. I think it's about some of the basics, which I know Audit Committee enjoyed, the Dave Littlewood scary presentation, and we will continue to remind staff and members of the importance of cybersecurity. But regrettably, it will continue to be a significant risk for us. Chair, I'll pause there to see whether Andy would add anything to that.
Yeah, as Alan said, it's ongoing. We had a business continuity event with Children's only last week, and so that will get some output, and we'll start to look at that. So it's only a point in time that the status. So we are kind of moving, continue with it, and just we are working closely with MHCLG. We're one of 4 councils that are working with them on the next stage of their cyber assessment framework. So we are kind of seen as one of the leaders in this area. But you can, as Alan said, you can never be a leader because the people on the outside have way more money than us and more resources.
If I may, Chair, and just to finalise that point as well, as Andy says, we're seeing a significant amount of interest and investment in the work that we do. So MHCLG, Microsoft and other colleagues out there are kind of looking at what we are doing and wanting to contribute and participate. Regarding the matter associated with Minehead North Hill, whilst I can't comment in detail, I am aware that the service is looking at that particular risk and considering the scores and reviews of that. I would suggest, Chair, that it would probably be appropriate for the scrutiny committee to take a look at that risk if they are concerned around the mitigating measures and what needs to be addressed. The risk that we have flagged, the issue that we have flagged corporately is the mitigation appropriate, and is there a means of mitigating that particular concern? So the service is assessing that, and I'm sure we'll update the committee accordingly.
Yeah, yes, I think it may well fall into climate and place at this point rather than communities, but the 2 committees, of course, are being brought together in the new corporate year. So I will have a chat with the chairman of Climate and Place, but thank you.
So I got Habib and then Dawn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look at table 1 on the overview of current strategy risks, and I genuinely believe that the only way to combat council's financial challenges in the future is through wealth creation. Yet I see risk mitigation on economic growth at around 9% that has been completed. What is the reason for that? We need to identify where our weaknesses are here and how we tackle it in future. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll bring Clive in as well around the particular points around wealth creation. There are clear constraints that councils need to work in associated with raising income, and investing for yield is now no longer a practice that councils are allowed to continue with. Clearly, we need to review our fees and charges, and members will be considering that, I'm sure, as part of the budget setting process, ensuring that those fees and charges are set at an appropriate level, but also that they do cover the costs that they are associated with them where appropriate to do so, and there aren't statutory requirements to fix charges at a particular level. I can't comment on the percentage process. All I would say is that in some instances, and we are reviewing the software that we use to ensure that the percentage assessments aren't just an arbitrary assessment. There is better levels of evidence around why we're seeing 9% progress, for example, and what would 20%, 30%, 40% progress going to be. And it was also depending on the individual officer making the assessment. So we'll be reviewing that in the new year to make sure we've got consistency associated with those assessments. We hand to Clive at that point, Chair, just to comment on the wealth creation point that Councillor Habib's mentioned.
Thank you, Alan. And obviously, a successful economic area is a successful council. One goes with the other. What we do know is that over a period of time, local government grants have fallen very significantly by, I think the Institute of Fiscal Studies would say, around 90% since 2010 fall in grants, and therefore there's been a greater reliance on council tax. So that said, then the more we can have local home building, the more we can encourage local businesses to invest in Somerset and pay business rates, although we only take a share of that, the better it's going to be for the council's finances, but also for the economy and the wealth of the area. As Alan said, we can't directly invest in activities or borrow for activities outside of Somerset. What we can do is where there is a need to invest in Somerset, we have the funds to do so, then we are able to invest for service purposes, which may deliver a return. But that primarily, that route to commercial activity has been taken away by government and sit for now as being too unsafe, given the history of a number of high-profile failures in local government.
Paul, did you want to say anything at this point? I probably should have said to everyone, for the benefit of Fiona, it would be helpful if you were to introduce who you are before you speak, just so Fiona gets used to who everyone is that's talking. I know the rest of us know each other, but if you wouldn't mind. So, Paul, hand over to you. Or just if you speak into the mic, just so the people online can hear you.
Hello. Thank you, Chairman. In terms of the risk concerned, I think there are a number of actions that report into it. So I think we'll have to have a look at how they are combining to support the risk score. It doesn't sound that's a fully representative measure of the progress. So I apologise for that, and we can look at it. There are a number of components to what drives the strategic risk, our investment attractiveness as an area, the work that we do to support business, and the position where we are in terms of our strategic influence and the plans that we have to support that. During the last year, we've updated our economic strategy for Somerset. We're in the process of developing implementation plans to help us take forward the key elements of that. And we're obviously engaging in major investment generation into Somerset, obviously including the Agratas investment at the Gravity site. So it does seem that we need to look at how that's feeding through in terms of the reporting.
So I've got, sorry, Habib, did you want a follow up?
If I may, I just wanted to come back. I mean, the title is inability to attract and retain investment. I wasn't actually referring to commercial activity here. I'm actually referring to the team that are actually in place in order to if as an investor I want to invest in Somerset White, who do I go and see? Who are the team? And just to refer to our inability to attract and retain is not good enough, in my view. We've got to have a dedicated team in place that, as an investor, if I wanted to come here, I know exactly what to do. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that it's not the commercial ability of the council, but it's the ability of the council to attract inward investment. Thank you.
Fair enough, point made. Habib, just out of interest, which scrutiny committee does this sit under? Does this sit under yours, Gwel, or does this sit economic development? I'm in place. Okay. Okay. Dawn, and I've got Mandy online, I believe.
Thank you. I'm in Frome North, so just so that you know. And I thought I would just throw in, sorry about the cricket, because I wouldn't have another opportunity publicly to say that. So my concern really is what the residents will feel more than anything else. So there's a high risk of retention of staff, and my concern really is where in the organisation are we going to feel this more acutely? Will this expose more areas of the council, and how will the residents feel with service delivery? And which area of the council would that be the most affected? But my question really is, are we making sure that this is being woven into our workforce planning as priority, specifically those areas that the residents will feel the most?
Yes, that's your area of expertise, Anna.
Thank you, Chair. I'll do my best. So certainly there are a couple of things that are quite pertinent to dealing with the recruitment and retention issue. So first and foremost, as members will know, we've now commenced the pay and grading review, which looks at ensuring that we have a robust pay and grading system in place following LGR. That's a longer term programme of work, but addressing that does ensure that we've got an appropriate fit for purpose pay and grading structure moving forward. Whilst that is being developed, we still have a number of tools in the toolbox to continue to look at those issues around recruitment and retention, and they are being deployed and actively deployed by all services where there are pressures regarding retention. In terms of those services that would be more evident or visible to residents, I think that was quite difficult to comment on, because depending on the outlook or the particular perspective of the resident. But it's fair to say that we now have robust information associated with where we see recruitment issues, where we see vacancies, ensuring the use of recruitment retention allowances, which we now track as part of that process, and making sure we have those in place. Linked to the pay and grading review as well, we also now have our people strategy, which our HR committee have approved along with our executive, and that's around ensuring that there's an overarching strategy whereby all services then can see how they are acting to deliver those things around recruitment, retention, and particular training. And then the final piece of the jigsaw is, as part of our transformation plan, a significant proportion of the initial investment with our partner Newton is looking at the organisational culture. So linked with the cultural development that we need to see as part of recruitment and retention, we want to ensure that transformation is part of just what we do rather than a bolt-on, and really learning from the success of My Life, My Future. So the cultural programme is part of that final piece in the jigsaw, so that we understand how everybody contributes to transformation. It's just part of what we do here. But also then we've got the opportunity to be really clear, and it gives our staff something exciting to focus on rather than just the day-to-day activities. It's also about service improvement and responding to the needs of the community. So with all the bits in place, it starts to address it. but there are issues at the moment in terms of that retention issues, and that's why we're using some of those basic tools that we have.
Thank you. Mandy, you've been very patient online. Welcome this morning.
Thank you. Mandy Chilcott, councillor for Minehead, one of two with Andy Hadley. As you'd expect, I just wanted to pick up the North Hill Minehead risk. Just so committee understand, the hill is constantly, I won't say moving, but pieces of debris do come down, and we have nets and netting that are hooked into the hill to catch that, to protect the row of cottages that lie in front. I only mention that because it says within the paperwork there's going to be a further business case to be made for a project management resource. So I look forward to seeing that business case along with others, but also to say James Duval has picked this up. He has said it's something that will be looked at next year. So I am really hopeful. There is a need for project management resource to protect all those in terms of the cliff and sort of coastal flooding, riparian ownership, etc. So just to say thank you, there's going to be a project management resource, but it's really important that we understand the risks when that business case comes forward, and I'm sure this risk information would form part of that business case. So just letting everybody know what's going on in Minehead, and that, like I said, James has been in touch with the local councillors about looking at it into next year. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Mandy. So before we move on, did you have your hand up earlier on, Fiona? Sorry. Do you want to come in first, and then I'll say my bit?
Yeah, thank you. I'm interested in the new risk, which is F006 on page 133. And this is around the lack of finance and procurement improvement plan. Just wanted to ask if there's an opportunity here to strengthen the piece around £5 fine. If there's an
idea.
Sorry, that's just what we do. Or drinks. If there's a piece in here that we can do to strengthen the need for the third-party contract oversight, because we have it as a cause in the sense of lack of expertise on contract management, but I think it goes beyond that. Whenever you delegate responsibility or people are signed up to provide a service, certainly from my perspective, we would expect to see regular oversight, regular meetings, reviews of complaints, any statutory risks that they have. So observation of their own risk register. So I think that needs to be a little bit more robust.
Very helpful. Who wants to pick that up?
Thank you for the question. So we are working on the finance and improvement plan. We've got interim support in. It's quite a detailed plan. We're going through every post that is in finance at the moment, every action that is needed in finance and procurement. So it's quite detailed, and it's going to come forward with a resource request for interim, probably more interim support in the short term to be able to get us out of a position to ensure that we are delivering a set of statements by the time frame on time, get some of our system improvements done. In terms of procurement, we are under capacity in procurement currently, and we are struggling when other big projects come along, such as the pay and reward project. So we are unpacking all of that, and our plan is to bring that forward to ELT for citing and then through the correct governance for approval. But we're trying to work on it to get it done by the end of this financial year.
Sorry, just to ask the question, will we get an opportunity to have a look at that report?
Don't see why not.
Right, thank you.
Thanks, Fiona. So over to you, Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of questions. One of which is page 74, sorry. Economic prosperity and delivery plans. We all know about gravity, etc. But in and around the Wellington to West Monkton area, we've Nexus, and we did have another at Leisure Wave that's been sold off. I have one business at the moment that very definitely wants to work in this area in particular, and can't find its units that it wants at the moment. And I'm wondering, what are we doing to promote the Nexus site and to help delivery of that? Because there's a great opportunity there that I believe we spent several £1 million as the county providing an access to, but it doesn't seem to have moved forward one little bit at the moment.
Paul, can I drop you in it?
In terms of Nexus, the council is in dialogue with an investor interested in moving to the site. It's very early stages, but we do consider it to be a serious interest in the site. And we are, I think, during the year, we've been very proactive at making sure that they know how to work with us and understand the locality well. So it's very early days, not in the public domain yet, but work in progress.
Delighted to hear it, Mr. Chairman. The other one was page 60, which was the report that mentioned kinship. And I was delighted to see that, because here is something, it was fostering in kinship that it was mentioned in. And here is something that I'm sure a small amount of money could lead to quite substantial savings. So whilst I see the report there, I do hope that the budget will be available, because that element of kinship that needs support will need support in the term of financially assistance. So I don't know if there is a separate budget for it or not.
If I may, so I'm sure finance colleagues can add to this, I'm sure they will, but as part of the council's transformation programme, our colleagues in children's services, along with the additional corporate support from the transformation team, has put forward a business case for that, and that has been approved in terms of that additional spend. So transformation monies have been made available to ensure that that project can continue. What we're seeing here in this report is the mobilisation of that project in particular, and what the steps need to be taken to kind of address it.
I have Councillor Shearer in the room, who is itching to tell us a bit more.
Itching to get on the karaoke mic. Yes, Heather Shearer, yes, Children and Families Education lead member. Alan's got it spot on. There is a business case which is around fostering and kinship, but I just wanted to add that actually kinship is something that we're increasing. Kinship and special guardianship care is something that our numbers are going up, which is brilliant, and it's also the thrust of the new governmental plans, which is always to be saying that the statutes that are coming through, that actually family group conferencing, making sure that families do everything they can to look after their children, we enable that. That is part of what we're trying to do. So yeah, that's been a growth for us, the numbers of kinship carers, whereas fostering's been a bit of a struggle to get more in.
Great, Mr. Chairman, I look forward to seeing reports on that.
Right. So I'm just going to bring us back to the report. I wanted to ask about ORG 11 and ORG 2, which are the two strategic risks which are increasing in their scores, particularly around the high needs budget. And I want to ask what additional measures we're putting in place to ensure that particularly the high needs pressures are brought under control. Duncan or Alan?
I'll start, Chair, and then I'm sure the Chief will come in. As part of our work, again, around transformation in particular, our diagnostic is showing that there is an opportunity to look at, particularly looking at those costs, but also more importantly, focusing on the outcomes of young people. So there's definitely something there that's coming through. We have had part of some of those business cases also approved as part of the initial phase of transformation as well. So again, seeing part of that work its way through, and then finally looking at the overall deficit management plan and ensuring that resources are being deployed to address those issues. So again, looking at that in its entirety. The executive approved that approach, as did council, in terms of the additional budget requirement. Our challenge is now mobilising and making sure we're putting all of the steps in place to start to address that deficit management plan, and progress needs to kind of increase. I'm sure Clive would say that as part of managing that pressure, but all of the building blocks are in place in terms of funding it, we now need to make sure that the activity is being delivered and delivered in accordance with the plan.
Want to add anything, Duncan? I've got Clive that wants to come in as well.
Briefly, just to say that part of the work for the Corporate Peer Challenge was about bringing in independent advisory board for the council. One of the people who were hoping to get onto that independent advisory board is someone who's got some experience around SEND, deficit management, etc. So that should help us. Just agree with everything that Mr. Jones said, but just to emphasise, I think we've got all things in place to actually help us manage the deficit now. I'm not quite convinced across the whole council we've got the belief that it's manageable, and we just need to work out how we get into a position where colleagues start to believe that the things we're doing will actually make a difference, because I think the programme manager's got a big task of heavy lifting here, and it's not just their job, it's the entire services job and the wider council's job as well.
Clive?
Thank you, Chair. This deficit has got the potential to be something that derails us, and we need to keep a sharp focus on this, as we are doing at the moment. Obviously, we produced the deficit management plan earlier in the year, which forecast growth out to 2030. Government have now said that they will take responsibility for SEND deficits from April 2028, but the councils will need to recognise, as at the end of 27-28, March 28, any deficits that they're holding within their balance sheet. And at the moment, what we are seeing is a rapid increase in the number of EHCPs, therefore the rapid increase in the amount of the deficit, which we're forecasting a significant level for next year. And there's a need now to recast the deficit management plan against that new deficit to make sure we're taking all actions. If there is any residual deficit at the end of 2028, that comes onto the council's balance sheet to be funded by reserves, and if that deficit is greater than the level of reserves, the council will be deemed to be bankrupt at that point in time. So I'll just urge members that when we look at the revenue budget, and I know how seriously you take the revenue budget, as we all do as officers, we have to carry on taking DMP equally seriously, because that is as big a risk to our future as a council as the main revenue budget itself.
This is the thing that keeps me awake at night. I think this should be the thing that keeps the rest of you awake at night. We do need urgently to get this under control, particularly given the government said that potentially we will retain the liability pre-2028. So we need to make sure that the profile of reduction in the deficit is front-loaded as far as possible, so that we're mitigating our risk. So if I could ask officers to continue to look for opportunities to strengthen the assurance around this risk, please. Okay, I'm going to move on from here, as long as everyone's content. Yeah, so thank you all. I assume that members are happy to note the contents of the reports, given the conversation that we've just had. So I'm going to move on to item 8, which is the internal audit progress report for 25/6, and hand over to Alistair. Morning, Alistair.
Morning, Chairman, and welcome to Fiona. So my name is Alistair Woodland, for those that don't know me, and I oversee internal audit services for Somerset Council. So this is a report for the committee to note, and it provides an update on progress against the internal audit plan, any changes that have happened to that plan, and for us to highlight any significant control weaknesses for your attention, as you are responsible for overseeing governance, risk and control, and reporting up to the full council on how well that is operating. This report is slightly different to our previous updates in terms of it's got slightly more statistical information around the counter fraud work that's been undertaken. So you can view that information, and I will come on to that shortly. If you turn to agenda page 186, this gives you an overview of the audit plan at this moment in time. There is one error on this page. It does highlight 3 limited assurance audits to bring to your attention. There was actually 4, and electrical safety should also have been included on there. One thing I would just draw your attention to, which is under recommendation tracking, which is the number of recommendations completed during the year. And as the authority is maturing, we are seeing more and more recommendations completed during each year. So this year already 126 have been completed, and that compares to 99 for the whole of last year. So as I say, we are seeing that audit recommendations are now being implemented. You move on to agenda page 189. This just gives a summary of where we are with outstanding audit recommendations. By the way we operate, we obviously report through to you as a committee by exception, highlighting the most important things that we think you should be aware of. But just to give you some contextual information around this information. So in terms of all recommendations raised in 23-24, 89% of those have been implemented. And for recommendations we raised during 24-25, 79% have been implemented. Now, obviously, that doesn't necessarily take into account which are the most important, and you could suggest that the 10% not implemented are the most important, but it's there just to give you some more information that whilst we do focus on those that are outstanding, there is still a significant portion of internal audit recommendations that are being implemented. Agenda page 190. So again, as a committee, just to highlight changes to the audit plan that have happened since your last update in September. The main reasons for changes is just additional grant work and where additional assurances are required. And again, this is perfectly normal for an audit plan to change during the year as the risk profile changes and needs change. What I would say is anything that is highlighted as deferred is not lost. It goes into our assessment for the audit work in 26-27, and if still seen as a priority, it will be picked up in 26-27. So moving on to the limited assurance audits that you need to be aware of. So on agenda page 193, 194. So this highlights the local community networks limited assurance audit. So again, there's no single significant reason for this limited assurance, but rather there's some strengthening around the monitoring of LCNs and the value that they deliver in terms of outcomes. This ties back to having smart objectives and putting some robust KPIs in place. We did do some benchmarking around LCNs with other authorities that operate similar type arrangements, and those do operate a more KPI and monitoring process overseeing the outcomes that LCNs deliver. But I would appreciate, obviously, that there's been a new authority and these being new to the authority, there's always going to be an embedding period for making LCNs as effective as they need to be. Agenda page 195, 196, this just highlights the delivery of savings report. This ties in with obviously the statutory recommendation 1 around developing medium-term financial savings. This audit focused on the processes used to identify, track and monitor delivery of savings being reported. The main recommendation in here is that there was no formal action plans to identify and improve risks identified as a risk of not being delivered. So we're looking to make sure there's more formalised arrangements of mitigation in place for those at risk, as well as strengthening evidence that's being retained to justify the savings are being delivered as expected. As you probably appreciate, the delivery of savings is becoming more and more complicated, and so making sure we've got robust evidence that supports the delivery of those savings as expected is important. Agenda page 197 and 198. So this just highlights the accounts receivable limited assurance audit. The main areas for strengthening around here is around the overview and monitoring, and this does tie in with some work that is still ongoing at the moment around how reporting information is coming out of MSD. That weakness in overview and monitoring, there are some control improvements or weaknesses around credit notes and deficiencies that does give rise to the opportunity of fraud or error, but I would stress there was none identified. And due to the weaknesses in monitoring and overview, obviously those sorts of things wouldn't necessarily be picked up or identified, so hence the limited assurance. And the final one on here to bring to your attention is electrical safety. This is on agenda page 199. So again, there was no main single weakness to bring this to limited assurance, but rather the nature of the medium-term weaknesses when seen together gave overall limited assurance. Those of you from Somerset West and Taunton may remember that Somerset West and Taunton self-referred itself to the Housing Inspectorate in March 23 over its electrical safety programme being behind. So there is a legal requirement to ensure that all properties have an electrical safety certificate that's no older than 5 years. So looking through here in terms of the weaknesses identified, there are some strengthening that needs over policy and procedures. But I would also just draw your attention to that 3.19% of properties, which is around 180 properties, do not have an up-to-date electrical safety certificate. And that is mainly down to access issues. So the compliance team are currently working more closely with tenancy services and legal services to ensure access is gained to those properties within a timely manner. So all properties are compliant with legal requirements. Just to pick out a few things through the report that might be of interest. So there's obviously been talk around disaster recovery, cybersecurity and business continuity. Those are areas highlighted that we'll be picking up during Q4 in our audit plan. And moving down through, just to highlight our counter fraud work, which is highlighted on page 205, and that highlights the counter fraud work. There is a more detailed section in Appendix E that highlights the counter fraud work that we've done to date, and I will come on to that shortly. So again, for members' interest, Appendix D, we track and monitor all Priority 1 recommendations and provide the updates to you as a committee so you can understand where those Priority 1 recommendations are and what the latest update notes are from management. These are highlighted in Appendix D, and you will note that obviously there are a number that are self-certified as complete. And again, just for making the audit committee aware, any limited or no assurance audit that we deliver, we will conduct a follow-up review to confirm those actions have been implemented once we've got confirmation that all the actions have been implemented by management. So those that are self-certified, once they're all implemented, we will then conduct our follow-up work. And in that regards, given the position of where the Life Factory project is, we have started our work around following up on those recommendations. And finally, then, just to give you a brief update around counter fraud activities, this is slightly more detailed in Appendix E. So this is on agenda page 221. So this just summarises the proactive counter fraud work that we do and the reactive counter fraud work that we do. So in terms of information that you might find interesting, it's just looking at the statistical information on reactive counter fraud work in Appendix C on agenda page 223. This shows that we are seeing more referrals coming into us, and I think that would be expected with the changes that we made in March 25 with how and things should be referred through to Southwest Audit Partnership. So as that awareness is growing, we would be expecting more referrals to come through to us, not that there's necessarily more instances of fraud that people have concerns about. Then finally, Appendix F. So as was brought to this committee in March is the overview of the anti-fraud action plan. And so on agenda page 228, going down through, summarises the position with regards to all the actions to improve the counter-fraud arrangements in the authority and which ones are still outstanding. As you can see, good progress has been made during the year, and there will be a reassessment, obviously looking at where we can strengthen counter-fraud arrangements further, that will be presented to this committee later and ready for setting up our action plan for 26-27. Before I end, just to ask the audit committee, as we move into Q4, I will be looking at pulling together the 26-27 audit plan. So I will be looking to engage with you and seek your views on particular areas of assurance that you may require. So please look out for that email that will be coming through to you in Q4, as I will be looking to formalise that audit plan ready for going to senior management towards the end of February and onto this committee in March. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
So members, open to you for questions. I'll start with Will and then Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, a couple of points on this. Just to note this right level, 194, the LCN. I note in the narrative that 4 of the chairs didn't respond to an invitation to have a chat from internal audit, which I think is quite disappointing. But I'll just leave that one there. You'd have thought that. Well, no, I'll leave it there. Really. The one I wanted to focus on was page 197. This is the debtors accounts receivable, which doesn't make very good reading as far as I can see. And I'm interested in this whole credit note thing, but I'll say a couple of things first, just to reflect on the fact that there's a large number of unposted invoices. I'd quite like to know what unposted invoices are, particularly back to 2023. Reporting capabilities, we've got this Microsoft Dynamics, doesn't seem to be up to the job that is necessary to keep control over our income and expenditure, but I'd like some sort of narrative on that. But in terms of the credit notes, I mean, my understanding of how this works, if you send somebody a bill, and this is what this is about, people who owe us money, and at the moment it's 19 million, or it was at the end of August, 19 million. We send them a bill and they, under normal circumstances, would send us the money. Now, I do live in the real world, and I understand that people sometimes, for various reasons, are reluctant to settle their own bills. But I'm trying to understand where credit notes come into this, because unless, for example, somebody's paid their council tax up front and then had to vacate for whatever reason, but the whole credit note thing seems to be woolly, I suppose, is probably the most best description. That we don't know how. There are 3,000 credit notes out there. We don't know what they're for, apparently. We don't know how much money is involved. This is on top of a 19 million debt. The council itself is running a deficit of, I don't know what it is today, but it's quite a lot of money. So getting on top of our debts, I would have thought, would be one of the key areas, and yet we don't seem to have the tools to enable us to do that. I note that of the debt, there's approximately 2.5% is deemed to be unrecoverable. And I'd like just a statement really as to whether that is sort of industry standard. I suspect it probably is under these circumstances, but so there's sort of three things there really. I mean, one is just that, is Microsoft Dynamics up to the job? How do these credit notes work? What are they for, and what's the system behind it? Because there doesn't appear to be a system behind it. And actually the potential level of write-off we're looking at in terms of other local authorities.
I think I've got an early birthday present for Ben. Thanks, Ben.
Hi, so Ben Bryant, Head of Corporate Finance, as well as birthday boy. Thanks, Joe. So I would say firstly, thank you to SWAT because of the collaboration in their presentation of this report. Usually they would put the report together complete, and they've identified the differences between the weaknesses within the debt management versus those within the accounts receivable. So therefore you can take those two angles. We have already got management action plans in place, and we're already making some developments within the system. Two things. One, so that we have mandatory fields, so that things like "why are you doing that" is written within the system rather than having paper trails. And that was part of the issues that SWAT were having. And we spoke at the last committee around the strengthening of access to data. We're really progressing now. We've been able to get the data out of Dynamics. Reporting within Dynamics isn't adequate for what we need, but getting the data out and the BI reporting is, we're really making efforts to get further on with that. And actually we're having a lot of success. A couple of direct questions then. So unposted invoices. So these are where users might have started to create an invoice in the system and not completed for whatever reason, and it's left unposted. So what we need to do is have a better reporting system there to chase down why the invoice was never complete and pretty much clear the system out if it's unneeded. You might find someone started a document, gone off to do something else and come back later to it, or not come back to it. So I think that's more around cleansing the system. Credit note is usually disputes and errors. So we've raised something that we need to credit note back out. We can try and bring more detail forward in there. In terms of the system, we raise an invoice in the system because we have an element of the bespoke in the system. You would normally just hit a button to create a credit note and you have that direct link. What the auditors have highlighted is that the system allows you to input a credit note, and therefore you've lost that link between the original invoice and that. So we are looking at system developments to be able to link the two.
I've got Clive online as well. Do you want to?
Very briefly, I mean, I think the external audit highlighted contra payments. So is it the case that some of these credit notes are implicated in the contra payments problem?
What's the contra payment? Sorry.
Contra payment is if I pay you 100 quid, but you owe me 20, then the transaction is only 80. There's contra to 80.
No, I would say not. So that's about the allocation of cash with your multiple invoices and certain payments are coming through to the account.
Really, just a wider comment, well, or two comments really. One is on the processes that we adopt, and clearly we've already referred to the finance improvement plan and recognised there's a lot of work we need to do now with a finance team that's stretched at the moment. But we recognise the need to get those finances processes improved and better, and we'll do that both in terms of financial management and the accounts. So that work is ongoing, and the finance team will be fully engaged on that. But I wanted to comment on Dynamics as a system. There are four main systems used across local government: Dynamics, Aggresso, Unit 4, Oracle and SAP. The council chose to go for Dynamics. It was one of the few councils to do so. I think there's only one other council using it. Dynamics is an okay system. It's fine, and it's used in the private sector. That's no problem, but it hasn't got a local government base. So we are, to some extent, making it work for us. But once we do get it to work, it should be working okay. Now, we can argue about the decision that was taken a couple of years ago, but that was taken. We're not going to reverse that decision. We're not going to throw it out, and there's nothing wrong with Dynamics. It's just got to be made for work for a local government setting and for our particular needs. So we are investing in time in making that work for us. As Ben's alluded to, we're using other tools like Power BI to do better reporting and enable other tools to help us. So, we will get there with it. But, undoubtedly, if you look back on decisions that were taken a couple of years ago, would we have chosen something different? Probably in the middle of a financial emergency, not. But it does mean there's a lot of effort now going into making the system do what we need it to do.
Thanks, Clive. Liz?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say it was quite a bit more than a couple of years ago. It was
Thank you.
Certainly, it was 21, 22, I think. Okay. So it was some time before it came into being, I understand, on vesting day. And if anybody's doing a lessons learned for LGR, local government reorganisation, top of my list is don't have a new finance system on vesting day.
I'm not sure Microsoft Dynamics are necessarily going to like your review of the system. Microsoft Dynamics is okay from its one good user.
Let me qualify that, Chair. It works well in the private sector. It's a trusted system in the private sector, and it's used because of the ease of interface with things like Excel, and the two go hand in hand. So there is a real logic to what they're doing, and it could well be one of the leading systems. But there's further work to do within the local government sector, is the point I was referring to, and we are pressing ahead and doing some of that stuff, and hopefully we'll be a leading light in how to use Dynamics properly.
Perfect. Thank you, Clive. Any further questions in the committee? Oh, I forgot you, Councillor Baker. Sorry.
How very dare you, Chair. How could you forget me? Alistair, as ever, lovely to see you, and thanks ever so much for your report. Just got a couple of things. Page 189, where 91 days overdue, we got 58 actions overdue at 91 days plus, I beg your pardon. That's a little concerning. And I just want to ask, what consequences really are there for risk owners on this? Because, what sort of incentives are there to clear that? Because the cynic in me could think, well, if I'm a risk owner and nobody's chasing me for it, I could, forget about it. So that's one of the questions. The second one was on the electrical safety reports, which was rather a concern when you said there's so many outstanding. You mentioned you're working with the tenancy departments, but are we evidencing all this? And I mean, if something did happen in a property we haven't managed to check, are we covering ourselves to ensure that, if the worst came to the worst, we'd be okay to evidence we're doing all we can to get in? Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Alistair, I'm going to ask you to answer the second of those questions, and I'm going to ask management to answer the first of the questions, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So in terms of electrical safety, just to highlight, obviously the action is for management to engage with the tenancy service and legal services to make sure they can get in. So this is something new that they've started doing to bring that 3.19% that were overdue of electrical safety down and improve it. So at the moment, we should see improvement coming through based on what they're going to be doing going forward. But of course, we will be tracking it as part of our audit recommendation action. So hopefully when those actions are implemented, we can report back better figures for you when that work's complete.
Can I just come back on that? But Thanks, Alistair. But how are we evidencing, and it might not be you to answer this, I understand that, but if something does happen in a house we haven't managed to get access to, how are we evidencing that we've made every effort to get in if the whole place goes up in flames due to an electrical problem? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, as I understand it, Chair, we are gathering that evidence because of every property that's outstanding. We will have tried to gain access, which will involve wholesale paper chain, a wholesale trying to liaise with a tenant, a wholesale trying to get in. The issue starts to come down to a stage at what point do we go and get a court order and access a property against the tenant's will. I understand predecessor councils were unwilling to do that for obvious reason, and actually we do have significant backlogs in terms of trying to secure such things. So there will be a lot of paperwork, and that should be across every single property. So there should be evidence. I don't think it's a good reason why there would be a problem. But it might be a defence if there was. So, yeah, we should have that evidence in each case. Some of the properties, there are long-term issues with the buildings, which is part of the problem. In very few cases, will it be just tenant intransigence.
Okay, are you able to pick up the second part? Oh, sorry, the first part of Lee's question, which is around what the consequences for risk owners if they don't comply?
So we have a huge number of improvement actions, whether it's from internal audit reports, whether it's from external audit reports, whether it's from peer challenge or various other inspections, visits that we've had. What we've now got is everything captured, I think, as the committee is fully aware, on IdeaGen, which allows us to track. And we started several months ago now picking up through management meetings, both at executive director level and service director level and head of service level, what outstanding actions are there for each service. And they should be a discussion at the management team meeting, and individuals who are tasked to complete the action should be being chased. I think what's fair to say is if you look at the distribution of where the actions sit and where we see in the progress, that's clearly working well in some parts of the council. It's maybe not working as well in other parts of the council, potentially for good reason. Potentially it could be about resources, potentially it could be about the inability to recruit or vacancies. But what we need to do is start getting into the areas that we're not seeing the progress where we need to. And that's what we're literally doing over the last month, this month, effectively try and pick up on these. In terms of consequences, if an individual's asked to do something and they repeatedly refuse to do it, then obviously that could eventually lead in some sort of disciplinary action. That's not where we go to start with. We'll try and understand if someone's been asked to do something and agreed to do it, why it hasn't been done, and see what we can do to take away the barriers and assist. But you know, those are the processes we go through. I think you can see there's been progress across IdeaGen as a whole, but what we do need to do, and it's a conversation that we're actually having today, this afternoon, executive leadership team, is how do we really get some focus in on the internal audit actions, because some of those that were inherited or delivered early in the new council have been sat in a couple of cases for a while now, and they just need to be picked up on. It is difficult where we've got different people. If the officers in post when the internal audit was undertaken are still in post, we tend to see better traction. If everything's changed in the intervening period, it can be a bit more difficult to make that link about why that recommendation was there and how things work, etc.
Yeah, I have asked Sean Kenny to bring to the January committee an update on all of these outstanding actions, splitting it out by directorate so that we can understand where the problems are, and we can continue to push down on resolving as many of them as possible. Okay. Are there any further questions, Dawn?
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. As Will mentioned about the LCNs, I'm not sure the public are concerned about the outcomes of the LCNs, because I don't believe many of them even are aware that they exist, which is a real concern. On page 198, it talks about the Civica iCasework program or cloud-based system that was supposed to go live in November. Did that happen? That's just one of the other questions. And as you know, Gwyl mentioned about the debt recovery plan, on page 195, the words are no formal action plan for delivery of savings, which I think is another concern as well. But those are just a couple of points.
And
the Civica system, yes, that data is migrating and we've gone live with that now.
The other officers want to pick up the other points that Dawn raised? No. So Sarah. Sarah, did you want to pick that up?
Thank you, Chair. And sorry, I was a bit slow off the button there. Just to say, with regards to the LCNs, absolutely valid point from Councillor. We do have plans for improving engagement. The challenge is always around resourcing. We can't always have each LCN having a website, for example, that we support as a council, but it doesn't stop another partner from doing that. It is something that we are looking at. The other thing that needs to be clear, and it goes back to the essence of the audit, is what would attract a member of the public to an LCN, and we need to be really clear about what that offer is. There is a wider, more strategic review of community engagement and development underway, and the findings and recommendations from this audit playing into that. We will be reporting in probably spring next year on proposed way forward for the council, not just one service area, but how the council can create a framework for effective community engagement and development. And that will link very much with our comms colleagues as well, making sure that we're joined up in our messaging. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Right, colleagues content to move this one on? If they are, we're going to have a 15-minute break, so keep it brief.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, on the wider comments, what are the top fraud risks currently facing the council? I say this because the first Somerset Council fraud risk assessment was produced 23-24 by SWAP and now handed over to us. And what I like to see is less than that. And how do we proactively look at areas that we are susceptible to risks? Thank you.
Alistair, is that something you can pick up?
Yeah, so in terms of the fraud risk assessment, that has been updated by Somerset Council, and I believe it was shared with the Performance Risk and Budget Board. So in terms of the outcomes from that, I believe it will be summarised and shared with this committee, so you will be aware of kind of what the main fraud risk areas are. And certainly from my point of view, that is a document that feeds into our audit planning process. So any areas highlighted as significant is where we would do extra audit work to ensure that the controls are sufficient to bring those fraud risk areas down.
I'm going to move for a 15-minute break just so just for everyone's comfort in the room. So we'll come back at 1:45, if that's okay. All right. Catering in the usual place. All right, is everyone back? There should be. Claire, are we back on? Yeah, perfect. Right. Thank you for that short break, everyone. So I'm going to move on to item 9, which is the ICT audit progress report for 24/5. So hand over to you, Andy.
Those who don't know me, Andy Cannell, Service Director for ICT. So this is a kind of a brief update of kind of progress we've made since the last update, which, as you see from my second slide, had a lot of red in it. But there's one of the things I wanted to explain was we were kind of fixing forward, and some of the kind of consolidation projects we're going to remove some of these risks. Some of the future ones we're going to remove some of them as well. So this is just a kind of a quick slide of where we are. So, and these aren't Grant Thornton's new colours. This is just us having an estimate of where we think it is, just to clarify that. That got raised last week. So SAP, there has been some work. We've kind of reduced some of the privileged access, but I think as a system, it is managed by a third party. We do have two lots of kind of call systems. So we log a call and then we log a call with the third party. There is that kind of level of trust of them managing that. So I think from a purist audit perspective, I think we're probably still red. There are some kind of long-standing issues around the amount of audits we're taking, which were corporate decisions back in 2018 that have kind of carried forward that we're not going to fix in the short term, but obviously we will fix when we go live with the new version in April this year. So that was red and still is red. Dynamics, again, we've kind of reduced the privileged access. One of the lines was around having generic logins for support staff. We've removed those, but there are still going to be segregation of duty issues around staff within the finance service who have a day job but also have an admin role as well. So I think that kind of alludes to my next slide about how we move forward with that. So I think we've got better, but we still need to work out how do we define and how do we agree or not agree what the kind of separation between a BAU role in finance and that configuration, because at certain times during the year they will need to do those admin tasks, which means they can do more things, and how we kind of reduce that. The next three have all disappeared. So as part of the Revs and Bends project, this is the thing this is kind of proof of the pudding of fixing forward, is that we have migrated all these systems into the new NEC system. So I've put them a green, but you probably could put an X through them because they don't exist anymore. So there was risks around elevated access and certain people. So all those systems have disappeared and those people have now left the authority. So they have all disappeared. The Revs and Bend, the final NEC one, that's still at amber because we are kind of working on the delivery of completing that project. With Revs and Bends, the project plan kind of goes on hold because we've got to get the bills out between January and March, and then we can pick it up again and start consolidating. But the work we've done with Swap to do that kind of pre-audit of how we're doing, we're confident that we've completed a lot of the critical issues, and they will be fixed in Q1 next year. So pause there, see if there's any questions.
Opening the floor to questions. Fiona.
Yes, I do. Because it's been suggested that rather than just writing it down, I ask the question directly, so I'm going to do that. You mentioned the challenge around segregation of duties. I'm interested to know, is that a system restriction that's the challenge, or is it in terms of policy and how you look at the individual users and the access levels, or the way that you define an amount or an approval level? That
probably a bit of all of those, really. So it's a combination that someone will have the appropriate level to do their job in, say, a finance role. But when it comes to putting in a new version or changing something, you do have to have that elevated access. So it's done on, they request it, they get it for a day, and it gets removed off them. So the risk is reduced as much as possible. But it isn't possible to kind of separate very different kind of admin kind of user profiles for doing that work. But but there are system controls in place, so it isn't an issue with the system. It's more around, in an ideal world, you may have more resources. You might have a support person, and you might have a BAU person, but we don't have limited funds. So there's those kind of service-led decisions around that, which I'd like to kind of get documented, really.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's probably where my question was, because if it's a system generated challenge, then you can look to the provider to help you with that. But if it's around policy or user level, there are other manual ways in terms of access. So that's where the question came from.
A purist audit perspective, or a
sure
for a failure.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's finding the answer. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? No? Andy, thanks for updating.
Going to the next slide, because there's a couple of asks of
course.
So first is that, we've done a pre-audit with the Revs and Bends, and I've shared that with Councillor Ashton, and he's had a look at it. He's got some questions, but they'll be for the new year because most people have disappeared now. So it's kind of just getting that agreement that we do use Swap internal audit to do these kind of checks when we're doing a big project migration or app consolidation. And as you've seen from Alistair's report, the success factors is penciled in for one as well later on in the year, just to make sure those red risks that are in the earlier slide get fixed off. So they're sort of the same thing, but SAP is the current way we do HR and payroll. It's success factors is the new version, because our version of SAP is from 2009 and is on a very borrowed life. Most people have moved away from it, so it is kind of moving away to a more modern system. And some of the kind of risks are related to having a 16-year-old system still in place, because there was a very different world then. So there weren't different things you were kind of resolving. So that's the kind of next one we're going to be doing, to making sure that as much as possible we've covered off some of the things. But again, there might be some segregation of duties when it comes to support roles.
Thanks, Andy. So in terms of moving us forward, there's a recommendation on page 239 of the agenda pack. So is everyone happy to accept the recommendation as written? Yep. All those in favour? Perfect. Thank you, Andy. Thanks for all the
recommendations. There was one to do a working party as well, to help define where we've got these exceptions around segregation of duties. And so I'd like it to have them kind of documented, so we don't keep getting repeats every time we do an audit.
So we'll take them both on block then, Andy. Okay, so yeah, both recommendations approved. Okay.
Thank you.
Right, so moving on to item 10, which is the waivers and breaches Q2 update. I'll just remind members that if you wish to discuss anything within the exempt appendix, which is Appendix A, then we'll need to pass a motion to move into closed session. So if I can ask you to keep any public questions to the public section, and if we need to move into a closed session, then we'll take a vote and move forward. Okay, so Paul, did you want to present the report?
Yeah, good afternoon. We just about almost. Just to introduce myself, yeah, I'm the Paul Skews, I'm the head of procurement. So this is the quarterly report on waivers and breaches to procurement. For purpose of clarity, as ever, waivers are permitted. They do not breach the legislation, but they may be a deviation from the standard rules within our own contract procedure rules. Breaches, on the other hand, are not permitted under contract procedure rules, and it is not possible to breach the legislation, it's not possible to waive the legislation. So that's a general background. There's categories to the waivers that explain the rationale behind it. So in the report, as presented, there are a number of waivers. These are all fairly small values. They are generally for a single supplier marketplace, and therefore a waiver is completed to justify that. There is nothing in there which is over the thresholds. So generally low risk, low value. There's quite a number still in there for economy development and skills service, where we've awarded contracts under grant funding for training, which are user choice contracts. So that's pushed up the volume. We've had quite a number of those this year. So the waivers hopefully are fairly straightforward. We do have 5 breaches reported within this quarter. These are the usual frustrations, that they are retrospective requests that come through to procurement. I think in all of those 5 cases, had they been advised to procurement at the time that it happened, they would be perfect, legitimate waiver reasons, would not have counted as breaches. And officers are reminded that they must do these before the works are, or goods or services are provided, before purchase orders are raised. So, and in these cases, they would have been perfectly permitted waivers, which is always frustrating, I must say. I think the main point of attention on this report is the very last 2. So I'm sure some of you who were here last time will recall the heated debate that took place over one particular breach, within public health for 10 million, and that was reported as such. We've taken action, and that breach has now been removed from our records. The reason for that one was because it overspent the contract due to having received a large amount of unexpected grant funding. What we've done with that is to spend that money under the financial threshold of that contract, but we've then terminated the contract so it doesn't run into outer years, and we're in the process of awarding a new contract for the subsequent years. So all of that done perfectly legally and legitimately within our own rules and within the Procurement Act. So that £10 million reported breach has been removed. Similarly, last time round, there was a smaller breach of £240,000 for office photocopiers, which we reported to this committee. That again has been removed. Unbeknown to procurement, my dear friends in ICT approached legal and put a compliant contract in place, but we weren't notified and it was reported as a breach. So I'm hoping that we can see that as some very good news, that we've now taken 10.2 million out of our reported breaches for the year, and those therefore won't come onto the final annual report. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, Gwyl?
Yes, I won't go into specifics, but some of the breaches mentioned here seem to be contracts that are let every year and therefore ought to be in somebody's work plan to let in good time. And some of them, at least one of them, has been running for over 30 years. So it's quite disappointing to know that the work is being done or the request is being made retrospectively. And I'd be interested to know whether this is because particular areas of the business are under high pressure, or whether it's just lack of attention, I suppose, for want of a better word. But as I say, some of the contracts referred to here do seem to be ones that turn up every year. They, put in your work program, do them in time for whenever the run out date is, and this isn't being done. And I'm quite concerned about that. One of the things I did want to look at, certainly from a scrutiny point of view, was directorate work plans, so that you could get a sense of what was coming forward, so that you could understand how many contracts were going to be let in a particular time, and therefore the scrutiny committee would be ahead of the game in terms of how the progress against the work plan was being done in live time, really, because often, as with audit, you tend to pick up these things after the event. I'd much rather get ahead of the curve if we can.
Loving the questions, thank you. As regards some of these being regular, two of the breaches within this quarter are with Fakultativ Technologies. A member of my team is currently working with the cremation service to put compliant contracts in place for the next 4 years under a framework that exists with this supplier on it. So that will be resolved. And there's another one that we're doing that with as well. So we are looking at these and taking action. Two that pop up that frustrate me are the fleet rentals. I understand these are emergencies. There was a fire at the depot, so we had to react. But it's just a lack of attention to the process that these then come through months later. So frustration, whether it's officer time or officer knowledge, one or the other, but those are repeats. So I don't put it down to officer knowledge, because they've done this before and were reprimanded and they've done it again. On the last point, we have a procurement pipeline which lasts forever, effectively, with all the upcoming work, and it's divided by obviously the type of work, the timing, the business area that's doing it, and the dates, etc. That we have to have that. It helps us publish transparency notices. It was agreed at the last PRB that would be presented to exec twice a year to look at the future 12 months of activity, 12 to 18 months of activity, so that the exec can then say, yes, we're interested in that one, we want to know more. That one needs to go to scrutiny. That one we're happy to delegate decisions on. And it gives you that forward plan of the activity so it can be tracked and you can see what's coming up and the values of what's coming up.
Thanks, Paul. One question I would like to ask you is, we've had issues previously where the number of staff needing to undergo the procurement training was suboptimal, shall we say. Are we seeing any improvement in the uptake of?
Okay, couple of areas of training. One regarding the purchase order compliance. John Wall, my team, a few weeks ago has issued training material and asked that all people who are raising purchase orders complete that by the end of December. If they do not complete it, they will have their Dynamics license removed until such time as they are trained. We've seen quite a rapid take-up of that, but I would say John is probably poised on the 2nd of December to start filling out the removal requests of those licenses. The other main area of training has been on contract management training. That's proved difficult to tie down. We are currently pushing for people to do that training. I'll put a hand up and say we've noticed errors in the system of recording contracts, and it's frustrating areas along the lines of you've got a contract manager called Robert Smith, and then further down someone's put the contract manager as Rob Smith, and we've taken it as two different managers. So there's been a lot of tidying up done, a lot of communication going out, and we'll be pushing that again in the new year to get people through that training.
That's helpful to know. Any further questions for Paul? If not, I think that brings us to a close to our scheduled business. Got the work plan for
I have my hand up if you.
Oh, sorry, Flad, I didn't hear.
That's all right. That's all right. Don't worry. I was just going to add that we're looking at as well at changing the governance processes as well, so that we'll be bringing the pipeline of future procurements to executive on a regular basis, probably quarterly, possibly half yearly. By doing that, we get to see what procurements are coming up on the approval route, but which ones are lagging behind time in terms of proper time to get quotes or tenders. And there is a strong correlation between those who run out of time to get quotes, and then that then results in a potential breach. So this again should strengthen the process, but it give executive more oversight and governance over the entire pipeline of procurements coming through. Again, Audit Committee may want to see what we're doing in that respect in due course as well.
Thanks for that update, Clive. Unless any members have got any further questions, I'll move to item 11, which is just to note the Audit Committee work plan for 2025. I'd just like to thank all of you, both members and officers, for your contributions and your engagement with the work of Audit Committee through this year. Obviously, we've dealt with quite a lot of big issues as the year's gone on. I'm sure next year will be no exception, and we will continue to deal with those issues. But I think it's easy sometimes to point fingers and say actually that not enough progress is being made, but actually progress is being made, and that's the most important thing. So thank you to all of you for your engagement and your involvement in the work this year. I hope you have a very happy Christmas and a happy New Year. Okay, thanks then.